Cold wind blew through the ruins of the alien village. Snow covered the broken homes. Silence hung heavy in the air. There were no lights, no voices, just the sound of winter breathing across the shattered world. A human traveler named Reed walked, slowly, his boots crunching over ice and debris. His coat was old and his hands were numb, but he kept going. He wasn't here for work. He wasn't here for war. He was just looking for shelter. The storm behind him had been brutal. He had followed an old map to this place, hoping to find a safe spot to rest, but what he found was destruction. As he stepped over a fallen wall, he heard something, a sound too soft for the wind. A whimper. He froze. Then again, a cry, small, broken, from somewhere behind the rubble. Reed moved carefully, pushing aside cracked beams and glass. His flashlight flickered, shining into the darkness. That's when he saw her, an alien woman, curled up between two broken stone blocks, half covered by a torn cloth. Her skin was pale violet with glowing blue veins. Her hair, silver and tangled, stuck to her face. Her eyes, large and golden, watched him with fear and confusion. She was shivering. Her thin arms wrapped tightly around her body. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. Reed knelt down. "Hey," he said gently. "Can you hear me?" She didn't answer. He removed his coat and slowly offered it to her. She flinched, expecting a strike. But when nothing came, she reached out with shaking hands and took the coat. She wrapped it around herself like it was the only warmth in the world. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "Can you walk?" She tried to stand but collapsed. Her legs were too weak. Reed sighed. Without another word, he carefully picked her up. She was cold, far too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her head rested against his chest. Her body shook. They reached his small shelter, a single-room cabin he'd repaired months ago in case of travel. He placed her on the old mattress and lit the heater. The warmth slowly filled the room. She stayed silent, her eyes following his every move. He poured hot water into a cup and handed it to her. Still shaking, she took it. She sipped slowly. Her hands trembled so much the cup nearly tipped. Reed sat down on a wooden box across from her. "You alone?" he asked softly. She nodded again. He looked around. This place was attacked, wasn't it? Her lips parted, slightly. "They left me," she whispered. Her voice was soft, dry, broken. Reed leaned forward. "Your family?" She looked away. "No family. No one wanted me." Silence filled the room again. Then she looked at him directly for the first time. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You're human," he nodded. "That's right. They say humans don't care, that you take what you want." Reed's lips curved into a small smile. "I just wanted shelter. Found you instead." She looked down, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For being here." Reed shook his head. "Don't be." A few minutes passed. Then, as the heater hummed and the wind howled outside, she suddenly spoke again. Her voice was so quiet, he almost missed it. "If you want to use me, I won't fight." Reed looked at her, confused. "What?" She pulled the coat tighter around herself. "I know what happens to women like me. I'm not pretty anymore, but I can still warm your bed. Just don't leave me outside again." Reed's face changed. His hands slowly lowered, and his voice turned firm but gentle. "Hey," he said. "I'm not here for that." She blinked, unsure if she believed him. "You're safe now," he added. "No one's using you, no one's leaving you, not tonight." She stared at him, not with hope but with disbelief. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever meant it. That night she lay on the mattress wrapped in his coat. He slept. On the floor near the door between her and the cold, she stayed awake for hours watching him, waiting for him to change. But he didn't. He just slept, tired and quiet. Like he had nothing to take and nothing to hide. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel owned. She felt seen. When she woke, the room was warm. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stared at the wooden ceiling above her. The soft blanket wrapped around her body felt too good to be real. For years, every surface she had slept on was cold. Metal floors, broken tiles, dusty corners. Now she was lying on something soft. The coat the human had given her still covered her shoulders. She turned her head slowly. The human, Reed, sat, quietly near the fire, holding a warm mug in his hands. He wasn't watching her. He wasn't waiting. He just sat there, calm. She pulled the blanket closer and whispered, "Why are you still here?" He glanced over. "Because I said I would be." "You didn't do anything to me," she said slowly. "No," he replied. "You didn't ask me for anything." "I didn't." "Then why? Help me." Reed looked into the fire for a moment, then said, "You needed help. That's enough." She had never heard that before. Later, he brought her a bowl of hot soup. She took it with both hands and stared at it like it was treasure. The scent made her stomach twist. She hadn't eaten in days. Still, she hesitated. "Is this for me?" she asked. Reed nodded. "All yours." She looked down, tears stinging her eyes. "Back then I had to beg for scraps. They only fed me when I obeyed." "You don't have to obey anything here," he said. "Eat, rest. No one will hurt you." She ate slowly, like every bite might be taken away. Reed didn't speak. He didn't pressure her. He just sat nearby, fixing a broken lantern. The silence between them was peaceful. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of understanding. Later that evening, she tried to clean the floor. She moved slowly, her body still weak. Her hand trembled as she picked up the small broom and swept the edges of the room. "You don't need to do that," Reed said gently. "I want to," she replied. She accidentally knocked over a metal cup, and it clanged loudly on the floor. She flinched, dropped to her knees, and quickly picked it up, eyes wide expecting punishment. Reed simply walked over and picked up the cup with her. "No damage," he said calmly. "It's okay." She blinked. No yelling, no slaps, no orders. He even smiled. That night, as she lay in bed again, she watched him from across the room. He had made a small sleeping space on the floor with extra blankets. It didn't look comfortable. "Why don't you take the bed?" she asked. Reed chuckled. "It's your turn." "But I'm not. I mean..." She struggled to find the words. "You're not a guest. You're not a slave. You're just someone who needed the bed more than me." She didn't know how to respond. The wind outside howled against the wooden walls. She curled under the blanket and tried to sleep, but her heart beat too loudly. She turned to face the wall and said, "I'm sorry if I'm too much." "You're not," Reed replied softly from the floor. "I'm not like other women. They said I'm ruined." "Who said that?" he asked. She hesitated. "Men who used me, families who gave me away, traders who said I wouldn't sell unless I lowered my price to 0. Reed was quiet. Then he said, "They were wrong." Her eyes filled with tears again. "Then why did no one ever stay?" "Because they were weak," he said. "Not you." For a while, neither spoke. Then she whispered something she didn't plan to say. "If you want, I can stay close tonight." Reed sat up slightly. "Why?" She didn't look at him. "Because I don't want to be alone. And maybe you don't either." Reed nodded slowly. "All right, but only if that's your choice. Not a payment, not a duty." She moved across the room and carefully laid down near him. Not touching, just close. His warmth calmed her faster than fire ever had. She whispered into the dark, "What do I call you?" "Reed," he said. "And me? What's your name?" She went quiet for a long moment, then softly replied, Tirena. Reed smiled. Nice to meet you, Tirena. She smiled back, small and shy. That night, two souls slept, not as strangers, not as buyer and bought, but as two people healing, side by side, in quiet warmth. The next morning, Tirena woke before the sun. The small cabin was quiet. She sat up carefully, her blanket falling off her shoulder. The coat Reed had given her was still wrapped around her like safety. For a moment, she watched him sleeping on the floor. He was breathing softly, his chest rising and falling under the thick covers. He looked peaceful. She stood slowly, her thin legs still sore. Her steps were silent. She didn't want to wake him. In the corner of the cabin stood a small mirror, cracked, dusty, but still enough to show a reflection. She stepped closer. What she saw made her heart ache. Her hair, once silky silver, was tangled and dry. Her cheekbones were too sharp, her skin was stretched over her bones, and her eyes, those golden alien eyes that once shimmered, looked tired, empty. Then she turned slightly and saw what she had hidden for so long. Her back, marked, scarred, ugly lines carved across her skin like a cruel history book, some from whips, others from restraints. One long one near her shoulder that never healed right. She pulled the coat tighter, tears slipping down her cheeks. How could anyone see beauty in this? Behind her, she didn't hear Reed wake up. He stood quietly, watching her look at herself. He didn't speak at first, but when she reached up and touched the scars on her back, gently as if trying to erase them, he stepped closer. They hurt you, he said softly. Tirena gasped and turned, trying to hide herself. I didn't mean for you to see. I know, Reed said, but I'm not going to pretend I didn't. Her head dropped. They called me worthless, used goods, said no one would want someone like me. Reed was silent for a moment, then said, Do you want to know what I see when I look at you? She looked up, eyes wide. I see someone who survived, he continued. Someone still standing, still strong, still gentle. After everything. Her lips trembled. You don't see the scars? I see them, Reed said. And they don't make you ugly. They make you real. She turned back to the mirror. This time she didn't cry. She stared at her reflection, hearing his words echo inside her. You survived. You're real. You're strong. No one had ever said that to her, and meant it. That afternoon, Tirena tried to help more. She cleaned the shelves, folded the blankets, and even cooked a simple stew with ingredients Reed showed her how to use. She dropped a bowl by accident. It shattered. Her body tensed, heart pounding. But Reed only said, We'll use metal ones, next time. No yelling, no punishment. He just smiled and helped her sweep the floor. Later, as the sky turned orange outside, Tirena sat near the fireplace, holding a cup of warm tea. Reed sat nearby, fixing the cracked lantern again. Why do you help me? She asked suddenly. Reed didn't look up. Because no one else did. But why me? He paused, then looked her in the eyes. Because you were left behind. And I don't leave people behind. Her chest ached. You don't even know me, she whispered. I know enough, he said. I know you're brave. And you deserve more than what they gave you. Tirena covered her mouth, trying to hold back tears. She failed. But this time the tears didn't hurt. They healed. That night, Tirena looked in the mirror one last time before bed. She still saw the scars. But now, they weren't just signs of pain. They were proof that she had lived, that she had made it, that she had worth. And when she walked over to her blanket on the floor, Reed stood and gave her the bed again. She stared at him. You've already done so much for me. You should take the bed tonight. Reed smiled gently. I'll rest better, knowing you're safe. She looked at the bed, then back at him. I'm safe now, she said, because of you. Then for the first time she said, "Good night, Reed." He smiled. "Good night, Tirena." She lay under the covers, warmer than she had ever been. And when she closed her eyes, the last thing she saw was her reflection. Not broken, but beginning to feel whole. The snow was melting. Tirena stepped outside for the first time since Reed had found her. The sun peeked from behind the clouds and the trees shimmered with tiny drops of water. The world looked brighter, but her heart beat fast with every step. She held her arms close to her body. Her new clothes were plain but warm, stitched by Reed himself. She didn't look like a runaway anymore, but she still felt like one. Reed walked beside her, calm, steady, as if nothing could shake him. He was taking her to the nearby village. They needed supplies, flour, medicine, some fabric, and he didn't want to leave her behind alone. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, though her hands trembled. He didn't push, just kept walking. As they entered the village, heads turned. An alien woman walking beside a human man was rare. But this alien woman, tall, slim, silver-haired, glowing eyes, was even rarer. Some remembered her face, or thought they did. Whispers started instantly. "Is that her? She used to be a servant, right? Didn't she disappear months ago? I heard she begged traders to take her for free." Tirena's shoulders dropped. Her pace slowed. Reed noticed. "They don't matter," he said. "But they..." "Remember," she whispered. "Let them." He stopped in the middle of the street and turned to face her. "You don't belong to them. You don't need to shrink just because they stare." She looked at him surprised. "But I'm used to being small." "Try being seen instead," he said. They entered a small store. The woman behind the counter looked up, then down, uncomfortable. Tirena stepped back. Reed placed a few credits on the table and said, "Flour, cloth, bandages." The woman nodded but didn't speak. When Reed turned around, Tirena was gone. He stepped outside quickly and found her in the alley beside the store, sitting on a wooden crate with her arms wrapped around her knees. "They're right," she said, before he could speak. "I was used. I was passed around like an object. That's who I am." Reed sat beside her. "That's who you were," he said. "And even then you were still you. Still kind. Still alive." She shook her head. "They don't see that. They only see what I was." Reed leaned forward, his voice low. "They will keep whispering until you speak louder than their lies." She looked at him. "And if I can't, then I'll speak for you." Later, as they left the village, a group of young aliens crossed their path. One of them smirked. "She's still with you, human?" Reed didn't answer. Another said, "Must be desperate to keep someone like her." Tirena froze. The third laughed. "She used to be worth nothing. No one even wanted to touch her." Reed stepped forward, his eyes cold now, his words slow and sharp. "She's worth more than all of you combined." The laughter stopped. "She saved my life. She has more courage in her little finger than you have in your whole bodies. You don't get to judge her. You weren't there when she was alone. You didn't help her stand. You didn't carry her out of hell." He took Tirena's hand and said, "But I did." They walked away, leaving the boys silent. Back home, Tirena sat near the fireplace, holding a piece of wood. She had started carving lately, a new habit to calm her mind. She looked at Reed and said, "I wanted to run today. I know. But I didn't." He smiled. "I'm proud of you." She looked down at the carving, a small figure of a bird, its wings open. "I still hear their voices in my head," she whispered. "But yours is louder now." Reed looked at the figure in her hand. "You're learning to fly again." She placed the bird on the shelf beside the mirror, and for the first time she didn't flinch at her reflection. The sky turned dark fast. Clouds rolled over the hills like waves. A dry wind blew across the trees, snapping branches and throwing dust into the air. The animals grew quiet. Even the birds disappeared. Tirena stood by the window of the cabin, watching the trees sway, She felt something strange in her chest, a pressure, a warning. "Reed," she said softly. "Something feels wrong." Reed was in the back room, chopping vegetables for supper. "Just a storm," he replied calmly. "We've had worse." But the pressure in her chest didn't go away. She turned from the window and took one step. And that's when the floor beneath her feet shook. A sudden blast of heat roared from behind. Boom! The heater in the corner of the room exploded in sparks. Fire burst onto the curtains. Flames climbed the wooden walls like monsters. Smoke filled the room in seconds. "Reed!" she screamed. He came running, eyes wide. "Get out!" he yelled. But she didn't run. She saw a beam fall, right over Reed. It crashed on him, pinning him down as fire spread behind him. She rushed forward. "Terena, don't!" he shouted, coughing. But she was already beside him, using both hands to lift the heavy beam. Her arms burned, her fingers bled. But she lifted. The beam rolled off, and she pulled Reed out just before another wall collapsed. They crashed outside into the snow, choking, coughing, shaking. Flames lit the night behind them, turning their safe little home into a pile of orange, death. Terena fell to her knees beside Reed, checking his breath. He was bruised and coughing, but alive. She had burns on her arms. Her dress was singed. Her silver hair smelled like smoke. But none of that mattered. He was safe. That's all that mattered. The villagers saw the fire from afar. By the time they arrived, the cabin was nothing but ashes. They found Terena sitting beside Reed in the snow, holding his hand tightly. Her eyes were fierce, her body shaking from exhaustion and pain, but her spirit was unbroken. One of the older villagers stepped forward. "She saved him," a boy whispered. "She went inside." "I saw it too," said another. "She lifted that beam by herself. She pulled him out of fire," the old woman said. "That girl, she saved his life." The next morning, the villagers returned with supplies, blankets, food, a spare tent. No one whispered anymore. They spoke clearly, with respect. One young woman gave Terena a jar of healing balm for her burns. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling, "for what I said before, for judging you." Terena didn't answer. She just nodded. She was too tired to speak, but not too tired to understand. They weren't mocking her now. They were grateful. Reed woke later that day, wrapped in blankets, with snow gently falling outside. Terena sat beside him, holding his hand. "You dragged me out," he whispered. "I couldn't leave you," she said. "I told you to run. I never run from those I love." Reed blinked slowly. "You love me?" She nodded. "I didn't know what it was until I met you, but now I do. It's not something someone takes. It's something someone earns. And you earned mine." Reed smiled weakly. "I guess I'll have to make us a new cabin." She smiled back. "Only if it has a bigger bed." He laughed, then winced from the pain. She leaned down and whispered, "I'll warm it for you." That night, under a borrowed roof, she lay beside him, not in fear, not in shame, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she wanted to stay, because now he needed her, and she wasn't afraid anymore. A week passed. The fire had taken everything, the roof, the walls, their food, their warmth, but it had not taken them. Reed and Terena stayed in a borrowed storage shed on the edge of the village. The walls were thin, and the wind howled through the cracks, but it was dry and they were together. She woke early each morning and checked his wounds. He winced as she gently cleaned the bruises on his ribs and wrapped his leg. He joked through the pain. "You're a better nurse than I deserve," he whispered. "And you're more patient than I expected," she replied with a soft smile. Terena rarely left his side. But the villagers came. They brought food, bandages, wood. One brought a new coat, another brought strong tools. At first, she thought it was pity. But then the village elder came and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Not pity," she said. "Respect." Terena looked up, confused. You risked everything to save him, the elder continued. You showed us what strength looks like, and what love is. Tirena said nothing. Her throat felt tight. The elder pointed at the empty land beyond the hill. We want to help you build a new home, one that fits you. A real one. Tirena stood on the land the next morning holding a hammer in her hand. Reed sat nearby, wrapped in blankets, offering suggestions and drawing plans in the dirt with a stick. It should have wider doorways, he said, big enough for your shoulders. And taller ceilings, she added. I hate ducking under beams. He grinned. Exactly. Together, with the help of many hands, they began building. The villagers worked without hesitation. Some had once mocked her. Now they handed her wood, tied ropes, and asked her where the beams should go. The new cabin was larger than before, sturdy, warm, strong, just like the woman it was built for. Inside, it had 2 chairs, one small, one big, a kitchen with wide counters, a mirror that hung at her height, and a bed. A big one, strong legs, thick frame, made to hold love. When it was finished, Tirena stepped inside and turned in a slow circle. Everything fit. She wasn't squeezing into small spaces anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was home. That evening, she stood at the doorway watching the sunset. Reed walked slowly beside her, using a wooden cane. You like it? He asked. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. I never thought I'd have something like this. You deserve it, he said. She shook her head. I thought I was meant for small corners, cold floors, broken roofs. I never imagined someone would build something for me. Reed took her hand. You didn't imagine it, he said softly. You earned it. Inside, Tirena lit the fire herself. She made tea. She sat in her large chair and placed a blanket over Reed. He chuckled. Now you're taking care of me. I always was, she said. They sat together in the glow of the fire. No chains, no whispers, no shame, only peace, only love. Later that night, Tirena stood in front of the mirror. She wore a new dress, stitched by the village women. It fit her perfectly. Her hair was combed. Her skin had healed, though faint marks still remained. She looked into her own golden eyes and didn't flinch. She smiled. Because everything around her, every brick, every nail, every stitch, was a sign of something. She thought she'd never have a life that fit. The stars glowed bright that night. Tirena stood outside the cabin wrapped in a thick shawl. Snow crunched gently beneath her bare feet, but she didn't mind the cold. She looked up at the sky, at the thousands of stars blinking down on her. For so long those stars had watched her cry alone. Tonight, young, they saw her smile. Behind her, light flickered from the windows of her new home. Her home. Built with love. Built with hands that didn't hurt her. Built by a man who never asked her to be smaller. Inside, Reed sat by the fire, sipping tea, waiting for her. When she entered, he looked up and smiled. Cold out there? She nodded, but not inside. She walked to him slowly and sat beside him, her large hand covering his. I used to believe I had only one value, she said softly, that I could only warm a man's bed, that it was all I had to offer. Reed looked into her golden eyes. That's what they made you believe. But you never asked for that. He shook his head. I didn't want your body. I wanted your presence, your voice, your strength, the way you fight, the way you care. Tirena's throat tightened. I thought if I didn't give myself, you'd leave. Reed placed his cup down. Tirena, you already gave me more than anyone ever has. You gave me back my life, my purpose, my peace. She blinked, eyes shining. You never wanted me to warm your bed, she whispered. But I want to now. Not because I'm afraid. Not because I need shelter. But because, she took a deep breath, because I love you. Reed stood. He walked to a small drawer and pulled out something wrapped in soft cloth. He returned, knelt before her, and opened it. A ring. Simple, handmade. A small stone in the center that glowed with faint silver light. "I found this in the rubble of our old cabin," he said. "I've been saving it." She gasped, hand to her mouth. "I don't ask you to be less, I ask you to be with me. Not as someone who owes me, but as someone I can spend my life loving," Tirena cried. Not the tears of a broken woman, the tears of a healed one. She nodded, unable to speak. Reed stood and placed the ring gently on her finger. It didn't matter that her hands were larger than most. It fit, because it was made for her. That night, they lay together in the bed built for two, but big enough for love to stretch without limits. There were no whispers, no fear, no shame, only hearts beating side by side. The next morning, villagers came to greet them. They brought food, smiles, and soft blessings. Some stayed to help build a fence, others shared stories. Children laughed and played outside the new cabin. Tirena stood at the door watching them. One child, a little girl with blue freckles, ran up and asked, "Are you a queen?" Tirena chuckled. "No," the girl tilted her head. "But you're beautiful and strong, and you saved people. Isn't that what queens do?" Reed stepped beside her and smiled. "Then yes, she is." As the sun rose higher, Tirena knew something for certain. She was no longer just a woman trying to survive. She was no longer a shadow. She was no longer used. She was chosen. Not just to warm a bed, but to warm a life. And in return, she would never let that fire go out.